Hey everyone, this is Riddle Hackerager Raven, and I'm back with my recap and review of Snowpiercer Season number 1, Episode number 3, which is titled Access to Power. Full disclaimer, TNT provided me with a free copy of this episode for review purposes. This is not a sponsored video, and the opinions that I share are my own. So, coming to the episode, it opens up with Dr. Henry checking on Nikki, the girl who has been taken out of the drawers and she was wrongfully accused of murder, and she's not necessarily doing well. So the episode has this narration by Dr. Henry where he's talking about, while he's checking on Nikki and the new kids that are going to start their internships, he's talking about how everyone is doing stuff in this train for access. Access is the most important thing that you can get on the Snowpiercer, where there is access for a third class to go to second class, or to first class, or people from the second class trying to get into third class, and all of the black market stuff. And people have these chips inside their hands which grant them access. So we have this scene where this some random person is cutting the hand off someone else's arm. It's like a cut off limb, and he's taking the chip off. And this is the chip in the little cylinder over here. And yeah, so you basically trade for access. And we have this scene where this is a new character that we're introduced to, and he gets the chip from Osweiler. Then we have a scene which is basically a flashback, and it goes back to the point where Zara was invited to, I guess, second or third class to sing, and she's telling Layton that she has to go, and Layton, of course, because Layton loves Zara, he doesn't want her to go, but he understands. So he ends up giving his wedding ring to Zara, and he's like, Zara, you'll need it up there, so you can trade this ring if there's something important that you need done. And then they say their goodbyes. Coming to the present time, we have this message from Mr. Wilford, and Melanie ends up reading it to the staff. It's basically Mr. Wilford telling everyone to keep up the good work. However, this is also where Melanie thinks of a plan. She is like, we need to distract everyone because resources are limited, especially after what happened in the previous episode with all of the cows dying. So Melanie is like, if we have the fighting tournament, the first will be remembered. We'll get to remember how good they have, and it will be aspirational for third class, because the winner of the tournament will be like transferred to second class, and it will be a promotion for them as far as living standards are concerned. We get this scene where Layton, with his head covered, is being taken to meet someone, and of course his head is being covered because Mr. Wilford doesn't necessarily want anyone, especially Layton, to remember the layout of the train, and he doesn't want that information to reach the tailies. So it turns out that it was Melanie who wanted to talk to Layton, and Melanie is like, Layton, what's the progress of the investigation? And Layton is like, I would like to ask you what Sean was snitching on and what he was sharing with Mr. Wilford. And Melanie is like, and Roche is standing next to her, and Melanie is like, Sean was keeping an eye on a new drug that's called Chronol, and this is where Layton is like, Chronol ain't new. It has been being used by the tailies for 2 revolutions now, and of course that information takes Melanie and Roche by surprise. Layton also tells Roche that Osweiler has been trading Chronol for BJs in the train. Of course, Roche isn't happy to learn about that, and Melanie asks Roche to get to the bottom of it. While that's happening, we see Jinju hooking up with Bess. So Bess is the new girlfriend that Jinju has, and they make out, they hook up, and they're talking about Nikki and how Nikki was wrongfully put into the drawers. She's not the murderer. Bess asks Jinju if it's okay for them to talk to Nikki right now, and Jinju is like, no, Nikki is still confused, and that suspicious to Bess because according to Melanie, Nikki hasn't even woken up yet. So Bess really wants to share the information with Layton. While Roche is taking Layton to meet Osweiler, Layton tells Roche that the last time they handled a murder investigation, an innocent girl was accused of murder, and this is why Layton asks Roche to allow him to lead. Roche and Layton go to Osweiler, and Layton asks Osweiler about who his supplier is, and Osweiler is like, I don't have no supplier. The chronol that I was trading was the stuff that we confiscated. Of course, Osweiler is lying, and he ends up going to the character we saw in the beginning of the episode, and his name is Terrence. He's the head of the janitors, and Osweiler tells Terrence that Layton is looking into the chronol situation, and Terrence needs to be careful. Roche then wants to go and talk to Zara because again Zara is a murder suspect because she was planning to have a baby with Sean. So Layton tells Roche that Zara has nothing to do with it. But before Layton can leave the room, Zara tells Layton that it's the janitors and he needs to meet with them. While other people are happy about the tournament taking place, LJ's mom isn't. She knows that it's a distraction, and she basically tells Ruth that Mr. Wilfred can't continue to train like this and things are going to fall apart sooner or later. Then we have a scene where Roche is eating lunch, and we get to know that Roche has a wife and his wife prepares lunch for him, and he offers an apple to Layton. While they're having lunch, Bess comes in and she tells Layton that Nikki is awake and Roche is busy with lunch, so Roche tells Bess to take Layton with her. While that's happening, Melanie goes to see how the repairs are coming on the train, and it turns out that they are behind schedule because they don't have a whole lot of power, and Melanie's boyfriend tells Melanie that one of the ways that they can quicken the pace of the repairs is by letting the tail go, and Melanie is like, yeah, that's not happening, and her boyfriend jokes that I'm not saying that they need to let the tailies go as in kill them, they can move the tailies to third class, and Melanie is like, no, that's not happening either. Melanie then gets a call from Jinju, and she tells Melanie that Bess and Layton are on their way to meet Nikki, and Melanie is like, thank you Jinju, I'll handle this on my own. Nikki isn't doing good, her body has decomposed, she is confused. Bess tries to talk to Nikki, but Nikki isn't making any sense, and this is where Layton notices her teeth, and Layton is like, I'm not really sure if Nikki is under the influence of the drug that you gave her to sedate her, but whatever she is displaying right now in front of me, it does look like chronol withdrawal. Melanie comes in and Melanie is like, you two aren't even supposed to be here, so leave. While Melanie and Henry are talking, this is where Bess and Layton kind of connect the dots, and they're like, maybe chronol is a street version of a suspension drug that Mr. Wilfred is giving people. And that triggers Melanie. Of course, she's worried about it, and she directly speaks to Henry, and she says if that's possible, and Henry is like, yeah, that could be possible. It turns out that Henry has been giving some of the resources to make the suspension drug to trade for supplies to take care of the people in the drawers, basically bombs to prevent bed sores and other stuff. While Melanie and Henry are talking again, this is where Layton notices a bag full of hair, and he knows that that's the hair of the boy that he's adopted. Of course, Layton isn't happy about it, and he demands to know what happened to Miles, and this is where Melanie tells Layton that Miles is okay. We just gave him a haircut. He's been chosen for the internship program, and Layton, of course, wants to meet with Miles. And they do meet. Miles is doing well, and Miles, before saying goodbye to Layton, tells him that he remembers and that he'll be always part of the tale. And we have this scene where one of the characters is looking out a small window, and we find out that the character realizes that the train is moving slow because apparently that the peak the character saw was a peak that they should have passed yesterday according to the usual tracking of the train. Of course, the tailies realize that the train is slowing down because it's low on resources, and if they don't do anything, the tailies are always going to be the first who will have to experience even limited resources. Layton then asks Melanie that he needs to go and talk to Josie because he needs to tell Josie that Layton and Miles are okay, and Melanie is like, you know what, I let you see Josie after you ID the killer for me. It's time for fight night, and we see Melanie trying to record a message by Mr. Wilford by using previous recordings of him and then editing different words together in order to create a coherent speech. Fight night is taking place. Layton is there with Bess. They notice the janitors, but Bess is like, I don't necessarily know who they are, so I can't get you in contact with them. Before the fight can continue, it's between a guy and this girl in the front. The guy isn't on the stage. Anyway, we get a message from Mr. Wilford about how happy he is and how the engine will provide and reminding everyone to have fun, and then the fight starts. And Melanie tries to relax after making the speech, and I'm like, I feel for Melanie, what she's doing, and also the fact that she's hiding who Mr. Wilford really is. That's a whole lot of pressure for anyone, especially because she also has to make sure that everyone in the train survives. Zara ends up talking to Layton, and Layton asks Zara to tell him about the janitors, and Zara is like, they are very into the black market scene and they are a dangerous group. She ends up giving the wedding ring that Layton gave to her years ago as payment to talk to the janitors, and it turns out that even though Zara sold her own ring, she still kept on to the ring that Layton gave her. This is where we get a little conversation about Layton being unable to move in with Zara. Like, he can start a new life with her in third class or even second class, but the tailies need him right now, and Zara understands that Layton has to get back to the tail. Zara goes to talk to the janitors, and she wants the head janitor to know that Layton wants to speak to him. However, instead of the main janitor, Osweiler comes in, and Osweiler is like, Layton, I'm not really sure what you're doing. The janitor doesn't want to talk to you. And Layton is like, Osweiler, you're going to get me a meeting with the janitor, because if you don't, I have a whole lot of dirt on you, and I'm going to tell Roche. And at this point, I can even make some things up, and Roche will believe me. While that's happening, Nikki comes into the club, and Bess recognizes her, and Bess then supports Nikki before she can fall over, and she leads her out of the club. This is where LJ notices Nikki, and she's like, do you remember that girl? And her parents is like, who is she? And Nikki is like, she's the one who was wrongfully accused of murder the last time it happened. Then a fight occurs inside the club, and everyone is fighting each other. It's a whole commotion. Layton finally gets a meeting with Terrence, and this is where Terrence tells Layton that he saw Sean with a guy from first class. So we have our first actual murder suspect. Before leaving, Layton ends up asking Terrence a favor, and he trades his wedding ring for that favor. Fight night is over, everyone is going home, and Melanie says goodbye to the first class people, and LJ's parents are like, Melanie, we know that resources are dwindling, so why don't you just cut the tail off? And Melanie is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Again, I'm not really sure why Melanie still has the tail people surviving. Maybe there's a bigger arc, who knows. LJ notices Layton, and she ends up waving at him. After Layton got the description for the actual murder suspect, he tells Melanie that he'll share the information with her, but after he's able to meet with Josie. Layton and Josie meet each other at the tail. The door still isn't open, so Josie is meeting him through the small window in the door. And this is where Layton ends up telling everyone that he is in love with Josie, that it was a mistake, he isn't in love with Sarah, he loves Josie and he misses her. And then these two kiss, and I was like, I instantly knew that this was a fake move by Layton, because we all know that Layton doesn't love Josie like that. And when they ended up kissing, I was sure that Layton transferred something into her mouth. Melanie pulls Layton away from Josie, and she is like, tell me about the description of the murder suspect. We get to see Nikki just sitting in her bed, and the lights are going on and off because there are electrical issues because of dwindling power. And drum roll, it turns out that this is the person who was with Sean, and for those of you who remember, he is LJ's bodyguard, and he is just looking at Nikki in a very sinister manner, and I'm like, Bye bye, Nikki. The episode ends with Josie taking out the glass capsule from her mouth that Layton transferred into her mouth through the kiss, and the capsule has an access spill, which means that, or an access chip, which means that Josie can use that to gain access through different areas of the train. And this is where the episode ends. And I know that there are certain people who aren't feeling this show, but as someone who has watched the entire season, I'm telling you, even though there is a murder mystery happening, it's going to be concluded soon enough. And this show isn't a murder mystery show, even though certain reviewers reported it as such. It just has a bigger arc that you'll get to enjoy as the episodes go on. Yes, the murder mystery element was part of the first few episodes because, again, certain TV shows have to follow a format to get viewers to tune in weekly. But after the murder mystery is concluded in like the next 1 or 2 episodes, the entire show has so much layers to it that I can't wait for all of you to watch it. But yeah, I'll be doing a written review of this for the Geekery. The link to the review will be down in the comment section below as soon as the review goes up. Let me know what you thought of Snowpiercer season number 1, episode number 3. Again, I enjoyed it and I am so looking forward to what happens next and what you guys will think of it. And yeah, until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. I'll see you guys later.